Oh, hello there. Yes, well, I suppose it is midweek. Indeedy, yes. Opinion makers, or opinion formers, or opinion writers. I have no real idea exactly what they're there for. What exactly are these people paid for? And bearing in mind, some of our sort of most prolific opinion writers, people that tend to crop up all the time in the Daily Telegraph and presumably are paid a great deal for it, appear to have almost nothing to say all of the time. And I just thought I'd have a look today at, just a few of them from the last sort of 24 hours at the Daily Telegraph. We have Isabel Oakeshott, a woman that regularly turns up with Mike Graham every morning on Talk TV to give us the delights of her particular view, and it's just always the same. Our once civilised country deserves better than these filthy, lawless streets, which is her standard refrain. And the odd thing about that, of course, is that, she is ringing that in from, somewhere in the Middle East, isn't she? Yeah, she lives in the UAE. So I don't know whose streets it is that she's talking about, because she appears to have very little knowledge now of what's going on here. I do recall about 2 years ago, no, it was 1 year ago, wasn't it? When we had the Hair Hill riots, she presented herself as some kind of deep undercover agent because she spent 3.5 minutes talking to some kids in the area before nipping into a house because it was so dangerous. And yet here she is ringing it in, as she does indeed with Mike. And every morning I want somebody to say, where are you talking about? What country are you talking about? Because you're an economic refugee there. Whenever I post up on Twitter that she's not living in this country, I never get anyone complaining about it. Everyone just agrees with me. So the level of originality that we're getting is zero. The amount of pay that she's getting is enormous, presumably, because that's her living. And the validity of anything she has to say appears to be almost zero. She will simply sit there, being the partner of Richard Tice, Deputy of Reform, and just spout whatever it is that she's expected to. And I don't know. I can do that for half the money if you want me to. I'd quite happily do that for half the money. I could go on Mike Graham every morning and spout right-wing rubbish, but it doesn't mean anything. Yes, we have the classics, kind of the economic stuff, or just the right-wing cant. We get Michael Deacon, who again is allegedly the satirist, and I can never ever see anything satirical he ever writes. Nigel Farage is right, net zero is the new Brexit. Well, okay then, let's assume that it is. Does that mean then that it's going to be another economic disaster which you're going to push on us? Because nobody seems to, at the Telegraph, have any other idea. There's nobody at the Telegraph that suggests that net zero might actually be a sensible way for us not to die of starvation in 50 years. But I guess that's just me being, picky about it, isn't it? The inevitable Israeli apologist, Jake Simmons, the West can only survive by expunging the woke ideas in our universities. Okay, but here we end up with the notional, the notion of a total ahistorical reference. When exactly was it that the British press, in particular, say the Daily Mail, Daily Telegraph, thought that the universities were just the right amount of left wing? Because I can recall actually when I was at university, yes, a long time ago, way back last century, when everyone was complaining about all the lefties at university. And in a generation before that, people in the 60s, don't forget 1968, etc., LSE, Vietnam, etc., Ho Chi Minh, and all that, were complaining that the universities were full of left wingers. And a generation before that, you might think about Philby, Burgess and Maclean, who famously became communists at university. So when exactly is it that these dangerous lefties are going to, get rid of Western civilization? Because they seem to be taking their bleeding time about it. Or could it just be that Jake doesn't really like the idea of people being left-wing and having ideas around, what exactly a genocide is? I think it's more of the latter. But again, somebody who is paid to write this stuff, and you can just always know what it's going to be. But the key part about this, of course, is that these are people that don't live in the actual world that you and I do. There was a long series of discussions yesterday on GB News with Eamon Holmes, a man who is woefully overpaid to do nothing, complaining about the idea of feeding children at school. And I think to myself, so what exactly is it? What's the crisis? The crisis that everyone's been talking about for the last 2 years. The something, something, something crisis. It's not the feeding children at school crisis. No, it's the cost of living crisis. And yet there was this long discussion about how dreadful it is that our taxes should go to the feckless poor children. And I just think to myself, really? So we accept that there's a cost of living crisis, but yeah, it's not actually real. It's just caused by people being lazy, isn't it? Yeah, that's the working class for you. Because, of course, Eamon hasn't actually met anyone who's working class for the last 19 and a half years. And it's the same with the rest of them. They exist in that thing that they complain about, the media bubble in North London. All of them. Yeah? And then we come on to the notional view of what is a sensible economic policy. So we end up with Matthew Lynn, who keeps writing about the free market, despite the fact there's no such thing. The attack on Mark Zuckerberg threatens free market capitalism itself. Oh, dear God, don't say those nasty people are having a go at one of the richest men in the world, who has just basically kowtowed to Donald Trump and is quite happy to curtail everyone's free rights because he thinks it'll make him more money. Hounding entrepreneurs who have turned risky investments into successful business is bad news for everyone. No, it isn't. It's just bad news for the people that pay you, Matthew, isn't it? Pay you to have those opinions, which you know are just farcical nonsense. And yet, everyone around you is involved in the same scam. And, you know, the classic way that this comes together, perhaps I'm going to give Zoe a kicking, but Zoe Strimple, who has this: our dying cities and offices are crushing the next generation's life chances. Wondrous places like London are becoming simply decadent at best and depressingly unaffordable. Oh gosh, I wonder why that is. Could it be the wokeists at the universities? Could it be the feckless children deliberately being starved by their parents? Or could it be the sorts of policies that you and the rest of the media elites, which I think is fair enough to say that, have foisted on us for the last 40 or 45 years, who keep pushing the same rubbish, no matter how impoverished we will become? That dreaded cost of living crisis, which is just another way of saying poor, yeah? There's a poverty crisis in the UK, and these people decide that it isn't really that much of an issue unless it appears to worsen their quality of life. So Zoe, bless her, living in London, living in Hampstead as she does, and occasionally on her trips to Waitrose, she has to see people who look quite poor, and she's a bit unhappy about that. Well, I might suggest that she might think about it and write something different then. It would be nice to have a different opinion on the Telegraph or the Mail or GB News or Talk TV or anywhere. Just something that's different. But of course, it isn't what is being paid for by the entrepreneurial billionaires, a lot of them living in the UAE, probably right next door to Isabel, who are going to pay for it, is it? Yeah, that's not what they want. They want you to be talking about whether or not it's right to give kids some toast in the morning, and I don't see why their taxes should go to that. After all, it's not like we live in a country collectively, is it? And if we do give kids some toast, well, it'll just mean that Mark Zuckerberg has less money, which means we're all impoverished, because by God, that can't work, can it? When has capitalism ever worked whereby it's worked for people, like in the 60s and 70s and the 50s, and apart from those times? Anyway, do have a glorious one if you can. It's a kind of midweeky thing. I've got through yesterday. We'll see if we can do the same today, and then I'm looking forward to a slightly easier end to the week. Do enjoy if you can, and remember, no toast for the kids. No. Otherwise they won't develop entrepreneurial skills, will they?